this video, we're going to demonstrate Jenkins and OpenMake's Release Engineer working together. We're going to use the Release Engineer plugin for Jenkins so that Jenkins will do the build and then it will get Release Engineer to deploy the newly built application automatically. We will show how Release Engineer supports the software development lifecycle and how we can use approval tasks in Release Engineer to freeze built versions and to allow those versions to progress through the testing stages and onto production. So to demonstrate this, we have a very simple application called IT Guys. You can see we have version 1 of this application in our UAT and our SIT environments. All that IT Guys does is to display a web page with the first name and surname of some notable people in IT. What we're going to do is to create a version 2 of this application that adds a date of birth. Now this application has two components, a web application component and a database component. And you can see both of these components are specified here in Release Engineer. Now adding a date of birth will involve making a change to both the database and to the application code. So here we can see the database change that we're going to apply. This piece of SQL just adds the date of birth column and also adds an entry for Tommy Flowers, who was missed out of the database in version 1. We're also creating the date of birth for all the people that we've already got in the database. You can also see the code changes for home.jsp, which we're going to apply. This pulls the date of birth out from the person object. Okay, so let's get Jenkins to do the build. We're going to do this manually for now. So I'm just going to click build now, and the build's in progress. Okay, let's take a look at the log. You can see that Release Engineer has pulled the WAR file from the directory specified by the current build number. You can also see it's applied the SQL change to the database. If we go and have a look at what our application looks like now in UAT, just refresh that, you can see that version 2 is now live and pulling the additional date of birth column from the database. Okay, let's suppose we don't like the look of this and we want to make another change. So let's make version 2A. And save that and go back to Jenkins and do another build. Okay, so that build is done, and let's look at the log. Okay, so we can see that now we're pulling out IT Guys WAR version 93, and that's been applied. You'll also see that it hasn't applied the database change. That's because it knows that the database is already at version 2, and so it hasn't applied that database change again. If we go to our UAT environment and refresh, you can see that we've gone to version 2A. Okay, let's just do that again and go to version 2B this time and save that and go back to Jenkins and build again. And so now we're getting a proper CI/CD build engine working. Look at the log console output for that build, and again it's drill 94, and if I go to my UAT environment, you can see we've now applied a 2B. Now at some point this version is going to be acceptable and we'll need to promote it through our lifecycle. What we don't want to happen is for this version then to be overwritten by subsequent Jenkins builds. So to see how we do that, let's take a look at the IT Guys project configuration. You can see we're doing a pretty standard Ant build, but we've got a command that takes that build artifact, the WAR file, and copies it to a directory that's referenced by the build number. And that's where Release Engineer is going to be picking up the WAR file from, as you saw earlier. I mean, that could be checked into a binary repository if you want, or checked into a SCM tool. It doesn't matter. This is just for to give you some example. This is the Release Engineer plugin, and this is where we configure what we want Release Engineer to do. First, we have to specify the username and password that we want to use to log into Release Engineer. That will give you the target domain that the user uses and access to various functions and processes and everything else. The target environment is the environment that we're going to deploy to. In this case, it's the demo env, and the application that we want to deploy, IT guys, Jenkins in this case. The wait for deployment to complete checkbox basically just says that we want release engineer to be kicked off, and the Jenkins will either wait for that deployment to complete, or it will kick off the deployments and continue. In other words, if we say we want to wait for the deployment to complete, Jenkins will be held up until that deployment is completed. The success or failure of that deployment then drives the success or failure of the Jenkins build. If we leave that unchecked, then the build is kicked off. Release engineer runs the deployment in background, and the build is allowed to continue. Now, if for simple selections, we can possibly leave that there. But what we're going to do is to use the advanced version selection, and that gives us a number of additional options. The first one of which is find latest version. What that says is if the application, that's a base application, it's going to find the latest version of that application and deploy that. Now we can specify a branch name in there. That's a release engineer branch name, and if we specify that, it will find the latest version on that specified branch. So and then we've found the latest version that we want to deploy. This is the interesting checkbox though. We're saying if the latest version is approved, then we want you to create a new version. And we give it the task name that we want it to run to do that. What this means is if the version that it's going to deploy is already approved, then release engineer will create a new version of that application automatically. And then that is the version that will then be deployed. So the version that's approved is then left alone, and then that can be moved through our life cycle. So let's do that. Let's go into release engineer, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to approve for sit the version that we've just deployed, and that's now approved. Command timeline. So you'll remember that we were at 2B. That's the version that we've now approved, because that's the version that we've just deployed. What I'm going to do now is make another change and make that 2C. So 2C is going to be our new build, but 2B is approved. So let's go back to Jenkins, and we'll do another build. You can see the build's been kicked off. So let's have a look at the log for this. And you can see it says application IT guys Jenkins version 2 is approved, creating new version. New application version IT guys version 3 has been created. Component IT guys Jenkins application component is associated with this application, and it's created a new version of, because we told it to, it's created a new version of the component as well. And it's swapped that in, and now it's deployed version 3. So you can see we've set the build number to 95, and the deployment is picked up version 95 that we've just built. But that is now version 3. If I go back to release engineer and refresh that, you can see that in our development now, we've got version 3 of IT guys, and version 2, the version we just deployed, is sitting in UAT. If I look at what's just been deployed, if I refresh that, that's version 2C, which is great. So now what I can do is I can take version 2 of our UAT, which we approved, and I'm going to move that to our sit domain. And then in the sit domain, I'm going to take version 2, and I'm going to deploy that into sit. So that's my sit environment. I'm going to deploy the approved version into sit. Now I've done that from inside release engineer, so I can look at my timeline. That's the deployment. And if I look at the log file, you can see that it's applied. It's run IT guys version 2. It's applied the SQL. It's applied the SQL because obviously in the sit environment we were still on version 1, so the SQL hadn't been applied. So it's taken the SQL code and applied that to roll the database forward. And you can see it's picked out version 94, build 94 of itguys.war. So if I now go to my sit environment and refresh that, you can see we were at 2B, which is the version we approved. The date of birth has been added, and UAT is in 2C. And the next build that we do will then create 2D and 2E and so on and so forth. So the approval process is quite important, and the plugin to Jenkins allows that approval process to automatically create a new version on demand. That's the end of the demo. Hope you found it interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching our online videos. OpenMakeMeister and Release Engineer comes with easy entry pricing. You can download a team version for free, and a team version supports 2 applications. An application is a complete package that is either compiled as a unit or deployed as a single unit. And it can include many components, database updates, or even OS level changes. More than 2 applications, we charge $1,000 per application per year on a subscription basis. And yes, we support a perpetual license when requested. You can start today by downloading either Meister or Release Engineer from GitHub. You can also open support issues at GitHub. For more information, you can go to openmakesoftware.com or email us at request-info@openmakesoftware.com. Thank you.